I'm so glad both of you are mentioning kind of cynicism and youth. And Bradley, not to ask you to step into role, but I think one of the things you did that was so formative, frankly, for me, I'm not even sure I'd be here if it weren't for your portrayal of Josh Lyman in The West Wing as this idealistic creature, because it really does capture what government service at its best is really about. I mean, you're not in it for, some people are in it for fame or glory. Really, you're in it, you go in because you want to heal, you want to protect, you want to serve the American public. And, that's certainly what I saw in two different administrations, many others. I'm not quite sure it's unfortunately true about this administration, but this administration is going to end and there's going to be a new day. And Bradley, I'd love to hear you just talk to young people about that for a moment, and why they shouldn't be cynical about public service.
Well, it's funny. I always think when it's very sweet of you to say, people come up all the time and they say, especially if I'm in DC, you're the show, or, you're the reason I went into politics. And I was there, and this kind of exhausted young person who was clearly a Hill staffer said, "Hey, you're the reason I went into politics." And I said, "Oh, that's really sweet." And he said, "Actually, I'm broke, I'm exhausted, and I don't think I'm ever going to kiss Mary Louise Parker." And I said, "I'm sorry. Listen, I just want young people to know that." That what I said before, their future is an act of creation, and it's an ongoing fight. I think young people sometimes think if an election happens, I mean, the fight will be over. The fight for justice and fairness will never ever be over. It's another interesting thing about Democrats as opposed to Republicans is the Republicans didn't like Donald Trump. They were horrified by him. Then he held up the list of Federalist judges as he was sort of pulling away, and it was very clear, I'm going to give you the courts. I'm going to give you a tax cut. And I feel like Republicans, partially because it's business interests, are incentivized on a daily basis to be involved in building the future. And for young people, it can appear that politics is an extracurricular rather than an absolutely urgent moral obligation we have to our future and to our children's future. We tend to, Democrats, we need to fall in love. We need to sit in the chair and get, this sort of civic lap dance, and we'll decide who we're in love with. They are more in love with the consequences of elections. And we have this, sort of showbiz need, to fall in love. Somebody told me that they weren't, a young, very progressive person said, "Well, I'm just not excited about." They were a Bernie supporter. I'm not excited about Joe Biden, and I'm like, "Are you excited about women's access to health care? Would that get you excited?" I just want young people to understand that, like these damn Republicans really seem to get, you don't just get a democracy, you have to make it every damn day.
And as you think about politicians falling in love, Bradley, one final question for you. I have to ask you about your state's former governor, Scott Walker, whom I know you've had a history of watching for more than a decade. And right after the tear gas was sprayed against those peaceful protesters at the White House, and for the president's photo op, he tweeted the following. He said, quote, "Hard to imagine any other president having the guts to walk out of the White House like this." Based on everything you know about former Governor Walker,
Scott Walker, I think I've gone on record as truly one of the great minds of the 13th century. I just am constantly fighting with younger voters, their I guess understandable cynicism. And I keep trying to remind them. I think it was John Kennedy who talked about, the future was an act of our own imagination. And I just want young people to understand the radically different world they would live in had Al Gore become president, the radically different future their children would have without all these, unqualified judges that, are the result of, a 70,000 vote deficit in 3 states. So I just want to fight cynicism and make sure that young people are not only ready to vote, but are making sure that everyone around them are ready to vote, because they will continue to do what they've been doing in Wisconsin, which is make it as confusing as possible and, change it up at the last minute.
I know we're almost out of time, but Marc, I just want to leave you with, to ask you one last question, which is, you've been doing this work so long. I know that you're going from state to state fighting to get people just the right to vote. Why are you doing this? Why is this work so important to you? How'd you pick this work? You've given up so much to do it. Why?
Yeah, so I woke up after 2016, like many people, very disoriented by it all. And I wanted to figure out, you said something which is like so exactly true, Neal. Is like one day you become a lawyer and you have this piece of paper and you're like, wow, I can go into a courtroom and I can sue, the county commission. Wait, I can sue the legislature. Oh my God, I can sue the governor, right? Like it is exactly that. And so I woke up after 2016 and I said, what is it that I can do that will help protect American democracy from what we are about to experience, which is going to be an all-out assault on those norms and institutions. So I spent the first couple of months sort of creating 2 organizations that are nonprofit organizations, one called We the Action, which connects volunteer progressive lawyers with progressive causes. The other called Democracy Forward, which holds the Trump administration accountable. And then I was still kind of lost. I'm like, okay, that's great. And I looked out and I realized that his false claims after he won an election, this was not after he lost, after he won an election, he claimed that 3 million undocumented immigrants voted in California. People forget that, but like literally he wins an election and his response is, yes, there was massive fraud. In fact, it was so massive, it was 3 million people. It was all in one state and they were all undocumented. And I realized that this was, as ridiculous as that sounded, this was going to be one of the cornerstones of how he would undermine democracy for the next 4 years. And we saw him set up a voter fraud commission that imploded on itself. And I just decided that I'm going to commit myself through the end of 2020 to fighting for voting rights. Because if we let him win the election because few people can vote. And I don't mean not everyone. I mean, just to put this in perspective, in a normal presidential election year, turnout is between 55 and 58%. So that's not great, but it's pretty consistent. If we let him make it so that fewer than 50% of the people can vote, 40% of the people can vote, 30% of the people can vote, then I wouldn't be able to feel like I earned that piece of paper that lets me go into court. So that's what I've been doing.
Thanks for tuning in to The New Normal featuring Marc Elias and Bradley Whitford. If you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow my Instagram and never miss a new update.